So on behalf of the staff and committee of the PMI, I would like to welcome you all to the PMI Victorian History Library. This event is supported by the UNESCO Melbourne City of Literature Office Virtual Writers in Residence program. The PMI wish to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we work. The PMI is located on the lands of the Wurundjeri Woi Wurrung people of the Kulin Nation. We pay our respects to elders past and present. Sovereignty has never been ceded. It always was and always will be Aboriginal land. We also acknowledge First Nations people rich history of knowledge keeping and knowledge management that is an inspiration to us all. Firstly, I'd just like to get the housekeeping out of the way. So we just make the request, if you can, that you please stay muted unless you're asking a question, as this prevents any excess background noise, ensures everyone can hear and see the speakers. There will be opportunities where speakers will call for questions throughout the event. However, if you do have a burning question or would prefer to type your question, you're also more than welcome to do so using the chat function. And one of the hosts, Carlys, Ellen or myself, will ask it verbally on your behalf. We are delighted to have you here to participate and share in this event. We are pleased to be able to welcome those of you who have been with us for some time, as well as those of you who are new to our library and its events. So the PMI Victorian History Library is the second oldest library, founded 1854. We collect all aspects of Victorian history, along with interstate and national material, which includes and informs the history of Victoria. We have more than 30,000 items on site, and the majority are available for loan. We are the only for-loan collection of its type in Australia. Our core collection is local history, and we hold information on most towns in Victoria. So today we are very excited to welcome you to Local History in the Classroom and Beyond online forum. We are very excited to have Carlys, who has organised and will chair this online forum, engaging panellists from libraries and education in discussion about how educators can embed local history in the curriculum to increase student engagement with their communities. And attendees will receive digital reference guides tailored to educators and students and a short survey after the event. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Carlys.
Thanks so much, Rhiannon. Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here this afternoon. So my name is Carlys and I am the librarian here at Prahran High School, which is just across the road from the PMI library. We can almost see it from our window here. I have been a school librarian for just over 8 years now, and I'm also currently the president of the Children's Book Council of Australia Victorian branch. I'm also a writer, and my debut middle grade novel is being published in May this year with Text Publishing. It's called All the Little Tricky Things. So in November last year, I was fortunate enough to be offered a virtual writers residency thanks to the UNESCO Melbourne City of Literature Office. Melbourne has been a UNESCO City of Literature since 2008. We were actually the second city in the world to be awarded this designation after Edinburgh. And we were given this designation due to the depth and vibrancy of our city's literary culture. Melbourne supports a diverse range of writers, a prosperous publishing industry, a successful culture of independent book selling, a healthy culture of reading and engagement in festivals, and of course, a wide variety of literary organisations, including our brilliant libraries, big and small. Each of the 10 writers in residence were allocated a different local literary organisation to work with virtually. And I was connected with the PMI Victorian History Library, which, as I said, is kind of ironic because I can see it from my window, yet we were under strict conditions that it had to be a virtual residency. So I still haven't set foot in the library since my residency began, even though I walk past it every day. As a member of the education support staff at my school, a large part of my role is assisting and resourcing the teaching staff to better achieve their teaching and learning goals. On the other hand, as a writer, I love creating work that is engaging to a teenage readership, and we know they can be kind of fussy, those teenagers. This residency was a really great opportunity where these two roles of mine aligned quite nicely. My aim for this residency has been to introduce children, teenagers, and educators to the wonders of the PMI library. In my experience working in schools over the past 8 years, I've realised how important it is for young people to be connected to local history in engaging and innovative ways. From what I've seen in classrooms, kids are especially interested in local history when they're given captivating and concise insights into things that relate to their own lives. Some of the examples that I've seen work really well include historical walking tours of the area tailored to student interest. For example, here at Prahran High School, we have done a street art walking tour of Prahran where a local artist points out contemporary and historical street art in the area. And also last year, a research task where students were to walk down their street and choose a building in their neighbourhood to research its history. I spoke to a student just yesterday, actually, and she sent me some of her work that she did. So I just wanted to share that with you as a little interesting thing. So the topic was, on your walk, find a place to stop and reflect. Find a building that you've passed by many times but never really thought about before. What captures your curiosity? And so this student who lives on Greville Street, so just up the road from Prahran High School and the PMI library, she wrote, I walk past the Dina's Icework building on Greville Street, which I live very close to. However, I haven't really thought deeply about its past life. I do believe people live there now, but obviously it used to be something else. It makes me especially curious to see a tall spire out the back, because that doesn't really match the front of the building, but yet looks the same age. To me, it's really interesting to find these types of places and think a bit more about what they are or what they used to be. So I thought that was just a lovely reflection from a student about something literally in her neighbourhood. At the school where I currently work at Prahran, our year 9s also undergo quite long personal projects. Sometimes they can be a whole year long, and a lot of them end up choosing to look into an element of local history or personal history. Lots of schools run these kinds of units, maybe especially at a year 9 level, and need resources in order to incorporate this kind of local history into the curriculum. And that is where institutions like the PMI library can help. And we're going to go into a little bit more depth on that during this session. So this session today is only part of my virtual residency. I also initiated a social media takeover for the PMI library in November last year, which you can see by searching the hashtag PMI for Teens. And I also created a reference document, which Rhiannon spoke about at the beginning. So that will be sent to you at the conclusion of this event and also made available on the PMI library website. It takes the form of an infographic that will help educators and their students access and explore the parts of the PMI collection that are most relevant to the curriculum and to the young people that they work with. So that is pretty much it from me. In a moment, we're going to kick off our teacher panel with 2 experienced educators who will discuss how they currently incorporate local history into their classrooms. And then we'll also hear from the collections librarian at PMI, the lovely Ellen Coates, about some of the ways that you can use the library. I hope that today's session opens your eyes to the potential for connection with the PMI library and give you some ideas of the pathways for young people to stay connected to local history and their communities through the learning that they do at school. All right, so I'd now like to introduce our teachers. So unfortunately, we did have 3 originally, but Isabella Webster, who is from Loreto, Mandeville, Hall, Toorak, is unfortunately unwell. Isabella is also on the PMI committee, so it's a shame we won't be able to hear from her today, but we do have 2 wonderful teachers here. So right here beside me, we have Holly Griffiths. Holly works with me at Prahran High School, obviously, that's why she's right here. She began her teaching career at Prahran High School in 2020. She's currently the head of humanities, and she also teaches English. And fun fact that I learned just yesterday, she's also a judge for the National History Competition. Ben Russell, who you can see on your screen, works at Richmond High School, where I've previously worked. Ben is also the head of humanities over there. He's currently teaching BCE history and philosophy, junior humanities and English, and is passionate about making history relevant to the lived experiences of his students. So please give them a virtual round of applause and we'll get straight into it. Great, I could actually see you all giving that applause, even if I couldn't hear it. So I thought we'd start by zooming out a little bit and looking at community connections more broadly, because they're so important in our schools, maybe particularly in these two schools because they are inner city schools and community connections are really vital. So maybe we'll start with Ben, since Holly would be just too easy. She's right here. Ben, how do you create community connections for your students? And maybe what are some of the examples of organizations or people that you or other teachers you work with reach out to in your wider community to benefit your students?
Yeah, thanks, Carlys. So at Richmond High School, we're obviously similar to Prahran, quite a new school, in a city, and there with the establishment of the school, there's been a huge emphasis put on community connection. So one of the ways that we create community connections for students is through, in Year 9, we have what's called the projects. Every subject we get, so basically English and humanities are put together in a project-based learning where students have to come up with some sort of tangible product at the end of whatever the project may be. I'm not currently teaching Year 9, so I'm talking for the Year 9 teachers. And at the end of that, they present their projects to the wider school community. It's been pretty hard to do that through COVID, but this year we're hoping to have lots of community engagement through things like exhibitions and things like that. We also have the entrepreneurial project, which again in Year 9, where students have to basically create their own business model. And as a part of that, they engage with local businesses and learn about how to run a business and how to set up a business. And that's largely student driven. The entrepreneurial project is trying to give them lots of agency in their learning. And so we engage local businesses in that process. Some of the community organizations that we've engaged with, Sister Works. So last year or the year before, time is quite hard to understand at the moment. Last year or the year before, we engaged Sister Works for an International Women's Day presentation. So Sister Works are just down the road from us, and they work for asylum seeker and refugee women. And so they came in and gave a talk, and we've done a lot of work with Sister Works over the last few years. We haven't done enough. I would love to talk about this later, but the Koori Heritage Trust is in our region, and that's something that I definitely, as head of humanities, would like to engage, would like to involve more in our learning programs, particularly when we learn about Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples and cultures and histories. We're right next door to the Richmond Bowls Club, which it is Richmond High School's only success in sports is in bowls. We've become state champions in bowls. So that was through our community connection with the Bowls Club, which has been a really strong connection since the very beginning of the school. And yeah, that's primarily where we get our community connections. I'm sure there's plenty more, but engaging parents as well and things like that.
Yeah, that's great. I love the diversity of those different connections as well, you know, and maybe a little bit of thinking outside the box. Like, it doesn't have to naturally be something that you think a school would connect with, you know, a bowls club you think would be quite different. But I know for a fact that relationship is really special. So yeah, that's great. Holly,
Yeah, I was also thinking about the fact that a lot of the developing of connections has had to respond to uncertainty. So we've often started with just kind of the immediate community. And that starts from just taking a walk around, and whether that's me taking a walk around and thinking about what kind of things I'm seeing that I can connect in with local history. We did a little kind of a little local history project, and I kind of picked out some buildings. We have the big store that is part of kind of the history of shopping and department stores that's really close by, and pointed out, has anyone noticed this before? And it says the big store, and let some students research that. But it can just be looking at things like street names, little markers that are on the streets that tell a bigger story that we can look into. Another way we've done this is kind of is using two community connections here. And one is Museums Victoria has an amazing database of immigration to Victoria, just census data and images and photographs. And we had students explore a community of their choice where they were able to connect that census data and those images with family histories as well. So some of them were able to interview family members and combine that with information that they found from a wider archive.
Yeah, great. So speaking more specifically about local history, what do you, and I know both of you are really passionate about global history, as you know, you should be as history teachers, but what is the importance of making sure that there are elements of local history in the curriculum alongside some of those more global units? Holly.
So with global history, we're often talking in terms of really big ideas and really big themes and really big events. And I think something that's really important for students is to then see the more micro aspect of those histories, to see how that affected real people. And I think perhaps a really engaging way to do that is to pull out people from local areas. So even if it's looking at World War I and I choose a quote that is from someone from Prahran, it's just that really quick connection that they can make. The other thing that I think local history offers alongside global history is a real opportunity for students to make their own histories. Locally, there are perhaps more gaps that students are able to then kind of do that deep research where they're using archives, and they can do original research and really create a history that perhaps someone hasn't explored before as well.
Yeah, great. Do you have anything to add to that, Ben?
Yeah, just as you were speaking then, Carlys, I had a thought about it. I mean, first of all, obviously, as Holly said, you know, it's about creating connections to and connections to history and making history as relevant as possible for us students. You know, the students making personal connections to their own histories or their family histories. But I was also thinking about, so this year I'm teaching Unit 3-4 History Revolutions for the first time, where we're learning about the Russian Revolution and the Chinese Revolution later in the year. And often a great way to engage students and to get students to think about what it would have been like to be in these, be at these huge events is through speculative history. So, for instance, when teaching about Bloody Sunday as a as a cause of the 1905 revolution in Russia, I ask students, you know, have you ever been to a rally or a protest? Many students have been to like Asian Day rallies, and so drawing that connection to, well, at Bloody Sunday, there was a group of protesters who were peacefully protesting in the same way that we might peacefully protest at a rally or a protest in the city, and they were shot down. What would that have been like? And so using not only actual history and local history, but also using local examples to try and make global history more relevant and come alive for students.
Yeah, great. So I think people here will probably be interested to know maybe some examples of how the two of you are currently embedding local history in your curriculum. And you have touched on a few things already, but do you have, Ben, any specific examples of projects that students have done around local history, either in humanities or your Year 9 projects?
Yeah, I can't speak much to the Year 9 projects because I still haven't taught Year 9 at school yet, but in terms of at Year 7, we learn, we focus a lot on pre-colonial Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander histories. And I know that in the very first year of the school in 2018, I led an excursion. We learnt about scarred trees and their importance as, you know, living historical sources that we can learn about how First Nations people lived. And I looked up where nearby scar trees were, and one of those places was Yarra Park, so just outside the MCG. And so I led an excursion down there, and students who'd been to the MCG countless times before to go to the footy or the cricket, who had never noticed these really significant historical scar trees and marker trees. It really, it was wonderful hearing students say, oh, I've never noticed this before. I had no idea that these were so significant, like these trees with fences around them to show their significance. So as a part of that, we did sort of walking tours around Richmond, and or as a part of that one tour, we walked there and thought about what it would have been like prior to colonization. And then completely separate to that, we have in Year 8 and Year 9 the cultural studies elective, where students, it's centered around the intercultural capability, and students learn about all different cultures. But as part of that, we start off with really local culture. We look at school culture, we look at personal identity and family history. So students create family trees, and within that, they learn about their own family history, which I suppose for many students incorporates local histories as well. Yeah.
Great. Holly?
Yeah, so when I was thinking about this question, I was thinking, oh, it can be really hard to incorporate local history into a really loaded curriculum where often you're thinking about how will I cover all of this. So that made me think about two of my, I think, very favorite activities that we run as a bit of a starting point with our students in two different units that we run. So one of them is getting students introduced to historical evidence. And the way that we do that is through a history mystery. So I kind of popped into Trove, and I think my search terms were Prahran, Chapel Street crime as a starting point. And I found this these interesting articles about a robbery that happened where essentially a bricklayer, I've made up that bit. The bricklayer bit was me, but someone with bricklayer tools got into a clothing shop and took out all of the clothes in one of the stores, and have developed a mystery around that where students have to look really, really closely at the evidence, and then brought in another archive, the Public Records Office of Victoria, that has a really fascinating collection of mugshots from the 1920s, and they're beautiful. They're really gorgeous images. So brought in those as well, and kind of developed my own criminal records for these gorgeous looking criminals, and incorporated this with the articles that I found about this burglary. And then just kind of let the students really, and because it's a mystery and they want to find out who done it, they really look at the sources really deeply, and they say, oh, it's not real, is it? Oh, yeah, the crime is real. These people have nothing to do with it, but the crime is real. And have that engaging kind of interest in the sources. And then often they ask, oh, where did you find it? And I'll show them Trove. And that'll start some of the looking up their own local history by just kind of picking dates and playing around with Trove in that way. Another one that I have done again at Year 7, and again as a bit of a introduction to this time archaeological evidence, is using a resource that's been developed by the Melbourne Metro Tunnel dig. Before they started digging there, they pulled out a lot of archaeological evidence, and they've actually formulated it as a Minecraft kind of activity that you can do. Now, I haven't done the Minecraft version, but I did kind of steal some of those resources to develop a little bit of their own archaeological dig. So we've got the resources there. And essentially what the program shows you is these are the things that we found. Can you guess where it was? So we go through the same process, and then essentially showing students that these are where these items were found. So yeah, those are two of my very favorite ways that we've used local history.
Yeah, so great. I think I said in my introduction, you know, young people are so much more engaged when their educators are giving them these kinds of activities that are really captivating. And I feel really fortunate to have worked with both Holly and Ben. You guys are just, yeah, incredible educators, making these things so much more interesting to young people. I think as well, just I'm not a teacher, but in the library, I've had a lot of success using zines when it comes to local history. And I know the PMI library has a little zine collection over there. I've written zines for about a decade now. And I think they're really nice sort of little mini local histories, or they can be. And when I've spoken to students in the past about them, I often recount a story where I was once locked inside my apartment for a day. My roommate took the key and I wasn't able to get out. Anyway, and so I ended up sitting by the window for most of the day and recounting sort of what I saw on the street and sort of documenting what I'd seen on the street in Richmond. And then after I published that, I actually got a call from the National Library, and they wanted to acquire a copy of that zine because they thought it was a really good example of contemporary local history, because I had documented, you know, the goings on of the street that day. So I often talk to kids about, you know, you could be creating your own little bit of local history and publishing it in a zine as well. And I think kids love zines and are really, can really enjoy that medium. So that's just, something else that I've done. Great. Thank you both so much for sharing some of those examples. So Ben, you touched a little bit on this, but I was wondering how you ensure kind of authentic learning around First Nations history, and maybe how you incorporate that into the curriculum.
Yeah, so a lot of the time I feel as though historical inquiry is one way that we really try to engage students in First Nations histories. So, for example, using sorry, I've had a complete mind blank. Using like the dark emu hunter-gatherer versus agriculture debate, and having that as a starting point.
Oh, okay. I think we've just lost Ben, unfortunately. All good. I'm sure he'll rejoin when he can. Holly, do you have anything to say on that?
So one of the things that we really have thought about a lot with teaching First Nations history is about making sure it does stay local. And then when I was thinking about, right, why do we kind of make this commitment to doing more of a local lens, and we really look at Kulin Nations history. One of the reasons I think that's really important is because one way that one of the things we want students to get out of it is to understand that our First Nations histories and cultures are very diverse. And I think then in being really specific, that really helps them realize that. So we look specifically at Kulin Nations history as being our local area. And so we look at things like local stories and local sites of significance as well. So I was speaking earlier about that idea of finding evidence, and we use local historical sources to then start asking questions, such as the question that Ben was referring to earlier, which is this idea of hunter-gatherers, nomads, or the more farming aspects of their cultures.
Yeah, great. Sorry, Ben, we lost you briefly.
Yeah, sorry, my laptop ran out of battery, but I'm connected now.
All good. Sorry, did you want to continue what you were saying?
Yeah, I mean, I was mentioning sort of historical inquiry as a means of engaging students in learning about First Nations histories. I mean, one of those is the agricultural versus hunter-gatherer debate, and also the idea of, you know, our idea of when First Nations people first arrived in Australia is constantly evolving, and that's something that there is no historical sort of consensus about. And so it's really great. It was great, Holly, hearing about the using like using fossils and things like that to engage students. We often do something similar to try and get students thinking about when and where and how Aboriginal people would have first arrived in Australia. And also, I mean, I sort of touched on it before, but using the Koori Heritage Trust or local Aboriginal stories and experiences to try and engage students in learning about First Nations histories.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one where the community connections are really important to make. And certainly at the PMI library, they have a fantastic Indigenous collection as well, which is a really valuable resource for educators. Great. So on that note, I suppose my last kind of question was in regards to the PMI library. I mean, we also touched on things like Trove and other archives, but how can local history libraries or archives help benefit teachers in their planning, in your perspective, Holly?
Yeah, and I mean, we had this conversation this morning about the fact that I'm really keen to make the short walk over as I'm starting to plan our Year 10 history course and looking at Australians at War. As a quick search showed me that, oh, actually they have all the books I need that I've been kind of putting off going to my local library when I can just do it during school hours and come and hang out and do some of the research there. The other place that I see a real position for it was in that idea of students making history as well, and historical inquiry, as Ben mentioned earlier. When, especially with us being so close, I think it's a great resource that we can actually start bringing students down as they get into more senior levels and have the expertise of the people down at your library to kind of guide and help select resources that are going to help them out with their historical inquiry. So can see a real place for that in our future planning. The other thing, I think Ben's touched on this as well, is it really does give us a resource where students can be looking at histories that reflect their own experiences, that reflect their family's histories, as that archive is very particular to this place and the place that they can recognise themselves in some of the stories that are being told there as well.
Yeah, Holly and I are starting to plan an excursion, Rhiannon and Ellen. So get ready. We're gonna bring some kids over. Ben, do you have anything to add on top of that?
Yeah, I mean, Holly sort of touched on this, but just having like a collection of primary sources to draw on for students to embark on sort of the local history, historical inquiry would be fantastic. I mean, I think of when we teach about the stolen generations, we often do it through stolen generations testimonies. And I definitely want to incorporate the same sort of thing for teaching about the Holocaust. And I mean, we've got in Melbourne such a huge number of Holocaust survivors that it would be wonderful to have a sort of local history library that can draw on some of those testimonies as well. And yeah, also just narratives of local histories, like that is what engages students in history, is the story behind like the human experience. And so having a local history library to share those narratives for students to just be sort of swept up in the excitement of local history would be wonderful.
Yeah, what a great note to end on. Thank you so much. So very happy to take any questions from attendees. If anyone has a question, feel free to wave your hand around or type in the chat. Ben and Holly are very happy to answer any burning questions that you might have for them. If there aren't any right now, that's okay. We could, oh yes, Carol, please jump in.
Hi, Ben, are you aware that there's a Holocaust museum in Elstonwick? Okay, right. So I don't know if they have a library, but I assume they do.
Whenever teaching about the Holocaust in the past, and bear in mind, we haven't done enough Holocaust education, but we are really wanting to emphasize it now, particularly at year 9, year 10 level. I've drawn on a lot of resources from the New York Holocaust Memorial Museum because they have fantastic educational resources. However, I do know that there is a wonderful Holocaust museum in Elstonwick as well, which is, you know, not too far from Richmond. So yeah, I definitely want to draw on some of the resources they have there as well.
And one resource I could suggest for you is, and you may have even looked at it, to get the scar trees in near the MCG, Mayor Edelston's book. Have you used that?
No, I haven't.
It's a walking tour of Melbourne with Aboriginal sites.
Ah.
And I'm sure Ellen has a copy.
Good spruiking of the library there, Carol.
I'm a teacher librarian. And I worked at the Curie Trust for 7 years.
Oh, wonderful. Great. Thank you for sharing that. That's fantastic.
It was. Okay.
All right. If there aren't any other questions, we might move on. But if you do think of anything, Holly and Ben will still be here for a little bit longer. So that's all good. So thank you so much, Holly and Ben, for your generous insights into how you incorporate local history into your classrooms. And I'm sure a lot of these ideas are really valuable for those here today and those watching this recording in the future as well. So next up, I would like to introduce Ellen Coates from the PMI Library. So Ellen's going to speak a little bit about the collections and how educators and students can access the library. So over to you, Ellen.
Thanks, Carlys. And I wanted to thank Holly and Ben for your really interesting insights. It's already given me a few ideas. I'm just going to share my screen, which will hopefully work. There we go. Can everyone see that? Yep, great. So basically, I'm going to take you through just a bit of an overview of the collection, essentially. Oh, come on, here we go. So I want to also start by acknowledging the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung of the Kulin Nation, who are the traditional owners of the land on which the PMI stands, and I offer my respects to elders past and present. Sovereignty has never been ceded. It always was and always will be Aboriginal land. I also acknowledge First Nations people's rich history of knowledge keeping and knowledge management that we use as an inspiration here and which is an inspiration to us all. Very briefly, a little bit about me. My name is Ellen Coates. I'm the Collections Librarian and Volunteer Coordinator here at the PMI. My pronouns are she and her. You can find me on Twitter at BiblioL if you're ever interested, and I run the blog Historical Ragbag too, which is a collection of medieval and Australian history with a lot of pictures. So it's, yeah, small scale people history usually. Yeah, so also I talk fast. So if I'm going too quickly, wave and I will slow down. So very briefly, what is the PMI? So for a start, it stands for Prahran Mechanics Institute Victorian History Library. We tend to call it the PMI because otherwise it's a bit of a mouthful. So basically a Mechanics Institute was an 1800s term for blue collar worker. So they were essentially set up as adult education centres in the 1800s. We were founded in 1854, making us the second oldest library in Victoria. We beat the State Library by about 3 months. We started specialising in Victorian history in the 1980s, mainly to differentiate ourselves from all the public libraries that are around that already had the generalist collection. We collect all aspects of Victorian history, and this comes in many formats: books, periodicals, electronic resources, and ephemera. And if you don't know that term, it's brochures, pamphlets, booklets, maps, all of that kind of stuff. Whenever I go travelling to any kind of, I go to any nearest information centre and we'll clear them out of everything they've got, pretty much. And yes, we also do collect zines. Carlys, you're quite right. We have a small collection that was doubled this weekend because I went to the Festival of the Photocopier at the meat markets and bought quite a lot of zines. So yeah, they'll be catalogued this week. All right, so I'm just going to take you on a very quick visual tour of the building, as this is a virtual writer's residence, and hopefully I know some of you will have seen it before. This is the front of it. It's a 1960s fabric factory originally that's been modified. This is our third building. We started in Chapel Street, then moved to High Street, then we're now in, that's 39 St Edmunds Road. There are our doors from the original building. They came with us. That's just looking over the main library. That's looking back. The picture you can see printed across the glass is our original building from the I think it's from the 1890s. You can technically just see me at my desk. That's looking out over the main part of the library again. Back towards the periodical collection. So we collect and index the periodicals of pretty much every historical society in Victoria. That's just some of the local histories. And that's our event space for when we have in-person events. We had our first in-person event in 2 years last week. So we're just starting to ease back, getting people, like groups of people, back into the library. And yeah, that's just looking towards the closing doors. So basically, I'm just going to be presenting a snapshot of the PMI. It's not going to cover everything because there's no way I possibly could, but I'm hoping I'll cover the main areas, and you can always come down and explore. And I'm hoping this will just inspire some ideas of how you could use the collection as an education resource. So basically, the starting point is our catalogue. It's available online. Everything we have here that has been catalogued is listed on it. It's keyword searchable by subject and a whole bunch of different areas. So basically, if you're interested in the area, particularly interested in local history, search the town and we'll bring up everything that we've got in it. We sort resources by place, if humanly possible. All right, so the core of our collection is our local history collection. When I say we have history in pretty much every town in Victoria, I mean it. There aren't many gaps as far as we've managed to cover. As I said, we also collect and index the periodicals of every historical society in Victoria. I've just been doing an audit the last couple of weeks, actually. So this collection includes everything from general histories to towns, to schools, to religious institutions and religious organisations, to personal histories, to agriculture, industry, and much more. And if any of you have students that are writing local histories about the area, we'd love to have them in the collection as well. I work really hard to make sure we get as many voices involved in building this collection as we can. So yeah, feel free to send us through anything your students write. Students write with their permission, obviously. I'd love to add it to the collection. All right, art and artists. I will start by very briefly explaining the stuffed Highland cow. Her name is Clementine and she's our unofficial mascot. She took over some of our social media during lockdown when I was cataloguing from home. You can see her here in the library exploring some of our art books and dressed up for Melbourne Fashion Week with some of the fashion books. So art and artists and books about them is a really important social history of the time, and they helps to create our culture. We don't just have ordinary art books, we also collect works on architecture and architects, fashion, textiles, design. We're particularly strong in artists that identify as women. We've got a few galleries that have joined specifically to borrow those resources, and we try to make the collection as diverse as possible. We've got a lot of sculpture and photography and a really wide range of art forms. So Australian fiction. So we see, it might be a strange idea for a historical library to collect fiction, but we see Australian fiction as a really important part of the social time in which it was written and captures the zeitgeist. It's also a really good way of collecting minority voices because people are often writing their stories in fiction before they're writing them in non-fiction. So we see it as a really important part of our own voices collection, and it can be a great way of conveying a sense of place. So the picture you can see on the screen is actually an exploration of Victoria through fiction. So they're all different, Victoria and Australia, because there's a couple of international ones down the bottom. Biographies. So we collect the biographies of Australians from all walks of life, from as many different areas of Victoria as we possibly can. We try to make it really varied, and these can be a really good way of getting a personal story to tie into a local history project. Entertainers and entertainment. The display is from Melbourne International Film Festival from last year, which we managed to get up between lockdowns, I think by like 2 days. Basically, they can be a really important social history, and it's very varied. So it includes not just film, we've got cinema, theatre histories, quite a lot of music as well, and all sorts of different ways that people engage with this kind of culture. Family histories. So there are a lot of dedicated family historians that have spent a lot of time doing a lot of research into their families. So these are really detailed, in-depth histories, and you can use them as inspiration to write your own family history, or you might be lucky enough to find some family history of your family that's already been written. The picture's just one of our displays of, I think there's a couple of Warrnambool ones there and a few other local ones as well. All right, First Nations Australians. As Carlys mentioned, this is a collection that we have put quite a lot of work into. This is last year's NAIDOC Week display, I think. This is one of the highest use areas of the collection. We have a lot of heritage and conservation architects, and heritage consultants that borrow significant portions of the collection. Probably our most borrowed items are the journals of George Augustus Robinson and the journals of William Thomas Allen, who were both protectors of Aborigines early in the Victorian colonial process and kept very detailed diaries. They're pretty much permanently on loan and keep getting reserved at each other. So this really is the heart of Victorian history, and we try to keep it as varied as possible. As Carlys and Holly were saying, that First Nations culture is very diverse and we try to reflect that, and we collect as much as we can in language as well. There's not it's not masses at the moment, but and that includes stretching to picture storybooks that are written in language. Immigrants and Immigration, this is encapsulating multiplicity of nationalities that make up Victoria's history. The image you can see on the screen is Recipes and Refuge, which is a fascinating book on refugees in Victoria and their stories and the recipes that they brought with them. So we try to highlight small voices, especially including refugees, so that they can stand out in the broader collection. Military history, we have really significant resources on World War I and World War II. You can see some of our ephemera on the screen. Actually, the one on the right, or my right, is a map, and the other one is a lift out from the Herald Sun. So if you want to know anything about World War I or World War II, yeah, we'll have it. I can pretty much guarantee it. We also have very strong battalion histories, local involvement in World War I in particular, because there's a lot of government funding going to that. And we have quite a few books and resources on women's experience in war and on the home front. That's an area I'm working to grow, so it's not just a male narrative. Natural history, you see another appearance of Clementine exploring some of our natural history books. Basically, the natural history of Victoria should be part of any history project. We collect everything from geology to animals to plants to gardens to weather. It's basically the glory of Victoria's natural world. And at the top of the screen, you can see a couple of our periodicals that we do loan. So again, these are all indexed and keyword searchable on the catalogue. Queer history. So the display is from Midsummer last year, because we had a Midsummer event and half our books are on loan at the moment because the lady who's writing the history of the new Pride Centre has borrowed most of them. So this is another one of our minority voice collections. Basically, we work hard to ensure that queer voices speak loudly within the overall history of Victoria. This collection's grown quite a lot, and quite a few of the zines I've just bought this weekend will go towards that as well. Sport. So we have a really wide range of Australian and Victorian sporting history, particular strength in AFL. This one's general history of AFL, I believe. It's the early Richmond Football Club photo down the bottom. I'm not 100% certain on that. We also have expanding into there's heaps of other areas of sport. So with AFL, we've got all the big clubs and all local clubs. And we've just started, I've got quite a few soccer histories. I've bought a history of baseball in Victoria, and I'm tracking down one on the history of lacrosse in Victoria, which someone has actually written a book on. And we also have a lot on women's involvement in sport. There's a really good book on women's cricket that came out at the end of last year. For example, transport. This one's fairly straightforward. Trains, buses, trams, ferries, ships, cars, anything that gets you somewhere, we've got a book on it. This is one of those areas where there has been a lot written. So there is a lot of detail in this collection. Some of it is very technical. It's again one of our higher use areas because the people that care about this really care about it and we love their enthusiasm. The PMI also houses the Victorian Railway History Library. They work out of our building. And I should have mentioned earlier, we also have the Cinema and Theatre Historical Society. So that's pretty much a basic summary. Sorry, I know it's trying to get through a lot fairly quickly. I'm biased, but I think it's a fantastic resource for educators and students. We work hard to preserve and promote and protect the history of Victoria. We collect all voices to ensure that there is as multifaceted a picture of Victoria's history as possible. And as I said, this really is only a snapshot. There's always more to discover here, and feel free to come down. I'll show you around and you can explore the collections. And that's it from me. So I will hand back to Carlys and answer any questions if there are any.
Thanks so much, Ellen. That was such a wonderful overview of the collection. So there are a couple of questions in the chat, actually. There's just, I guess, a statement from Adrian saying that his students are online 2,000 kilometres away, and it's sometimes hard to access resources. The nearest library is 2 to 3 hours away. Ellen, do you have anything that you could add about how people can access things online through PMI?
It's a slightly tricky one for us. We actually don't have any resources available online, which is partly to do with copyright and partly to do with our IT infrastructure. We do have a lot of interstate members because we have 3-week loan periods and pretty much indefinite renewals. So we get a lot of people that join. It's only $15 a year, and they borrow a pile of books, take them home, and then next time they're down in Melbourne in 6 months, they bring them back again. We're happy for people to have books out for as long as they want. We do post as well, but we have to charge for that because our membership fees just don't cover it, unfortunately. But yeah, so we don't have institutional memberships at the moment, but we're looking at possibly doing something with school libraries specifically. But yeah, if you're further away, we can scan material too. But again, you really need to be a member to do that, just from a time perspective, if nothing else. So yeah, if it's small stuff and we can scan within copyright, then we'll do that too.
Great. Thanks, Ellen. The other question is actually for Holly and Ben. Debbie would like to know, would Holly and Ben touch on students doing family history as an introduction to local history? I'm not a teacher, but I'm heavily involved in a major family history in regional Victoria. We want to get younger people involved in family history, as we believe family history is a good local history. So apart from individually approaching schools, do you have any suggestions about how we could develop partnerships with local schools? Holly, did you have an answer for that one?
Yeah, I would definitely say that approaching schools, I think as a humanities teacher, when you do get that reach out, that often that is something that you can, straight away say, oh yeah, I can see a place for that in. But the other thing I would say is that having perhaps some kind of online presence could be really helpful there too, with people just kind of looking for these things online. I know I do a lot of especially with more local history, I'm constantly just trying to find stuff out there and come across that stuff on the internet. And yeah, if you're available and findable, even through a social media account, perhaps that would lead people to you that might be able to find that connection useful as well.
Yeah, great. Ben, do you have anything to add on that?
I'm not sure the best way to answer that, but I just as a funny aside, for Christmas, my mum got me an ancestry kit. And so I've become obsessed with my own personal family history through that. I did the swab. I'm waiting for the results. And I went to my mum's house actually and looked through all this old family, these family documents. Like my grandmother left Germany as a German Jew in 1939 and went to America. And we had all the different families, like Third Reich passports and things like that. And so it was quite amazing going through that and coming up with a family tree, or like adding to the family tree. At school, we've done a lot of stuff in cultural, like I mentioned, with family trees using websites like familyecho.com. I'm not really sure the best way to engage like how to get more involved with family history, but I do definitely see the value in trying to get students engaged with their own family history.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know if I really answered the question.
No, all good. I don't remember many projects from my days at school, but I do very vividly remember doing the family history project where we chose a family member and researched them. I think my parents still have, that project that I put together. So it's something that I think is very memorable for young people. And like I keep saying, it's something that does engage them with local history because it is obviously relating to their lives. So a very valuable thing. All right, well, we might wrap things up unless there are any final questions. Please wave around wildly so I don't miss you. Nope. All good. So that brings us to the conclusion of today's session. Thank you all very much for coming along, and to future people that are watching this, thank you as well for watching this. Just a reminder that you'll all be emailed a copy of the new library reference document very shortly. And this resource was created to highlight aspects of the PMI library collection that tie into the curriculum and might be helpful for educators. I'd like to say a very big thank you to our speakers today, Holly, Ben and Ellen, as well as Rhiannon over at the PMI Library. And I'd also like to say a very big thank you to UNESCO Melbourne City of Literature Office for offering me this residency and giving me the opportunity to initiate this event. It has been a really great afternoon. So thank you all very much again.
And thank you, Carys.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great afternoon.